No one ever expected that a place called the Interstellar Coalition Academy for Conflict Resolution would be so smug. It was built into a spinning cylinder station, orbiting a blue-white gas giant in Sector 9X3, where gravity tilted by a few degrees, and every corridor smelled faintly of sterilized metal and overconfidence. The Academy was a melting pot of over 100 species, all of whom had made first contact with humans and quietly decided Earth was quirky, undisciplined, and inexplicably successful, especially in conflict, which annoyed them deeply. So the Academy had done what alien bureaucracies did best. They studied humanity, indexed every trait, and ultimately concluded human combat sports were ritualistic aggression displays lacking strategic merit. Boxing, wrestling, jiu-jitsu, Muay Thai, all reduced to hormonal performance theater. To them, it was an oddity, like Earth's fondness for dairy or pine-scented candles. Enter the Calrith. He was over 7 feet of coiled sinew, bio-enhanced reflexes, and a nervous system fast enough to track particle beams mid-slight. His name was Jorax, and he was the pride of the Calrithian Empire, a war-bred lineage of hyper-disciplined warriors who trained in synchronized motion from childhood. Jorax had won the Academy's annual martial symposium 3 years in a row. His people considered his presence a diplomatic gift and a warning. So when Earth sent a cultural ambassador to give a presentation on the evolution of human combat, most assumed it would be an amusing hour. What they didn't expect was Mitch. Mitch Callahan didn't look like a threat. 34, buzz cut, shoulders like engine blocks, and a nose that had clearly made too many wrong decisions. He stood on the presentation dais wearing a plain tracksuit and sneakers, hands relaxed at his sides. Behind him flickered clips of historical fights. Ali dancing in Zaire, Tyson's left hook, a slow-motion cross from Katie Taylor. "I'm not here to teach you how to punch each other," Mitch said, voice gravelly with old injuries and gym air. "I'm here to show you why this works when it shouldn't." A few students giggled, others whispered. A tall Saranian leaned over to a neighboring Keshvari and asked, "Why not just use directed energy strikes?" Mitch heard it, because in a street fight, no one waits for your targeting system. The laughter died down. The real trouble began when someone from the audience raised a hand. It was Srelvac, a narrow-shouldered Quarn with pulsating eye ridges and the attention span of a caffeine-overdosed squirrel. "So, your kind evolved ritual violence as performance?" Mitch scratched his chin. "We call it sports, but sure." Srelvac buzzed a laugh. "Then perhaps you'd enjoy demonstrating this, boxing, on someone trained to actually fight." Every neck turned. Jorax stood up slowly, stretching to his full height with a deliberate clench of every muscle group. The room went quiet. A formal challenge. Mitch blinked. "You want to spar?" "No," Jorax said. "I want to prove that instinct, without discipline, is theater. We fight under coalition standard combat conditions. 5 minutes, 1 knockout or submission." Mitch glanced at the Academy director, a wheezing Zeptori who looked halfway through a midlife crisis. "You're okay with this?" The director nodded too quickly. "As long as neither party sustains lethal injury." It wasn't a joke. The prep took 2 days. Mitch submitted to a full medical. His left shoulder had an old rotator cuff tear, healed but tight, several metacarpal fractures over the years, nasal septum deviated. Lungs showed scarring from a pre-career stint in construction where he'd inhaled too much concrete dust. The Academy's medic, a no-nonsense android named Ven, scanned him head to toe. "You're operating at 78% musculoskeletal efficiency," Ven said. "Good enough," Mitch replied, tying his gloves. "Do you understand the risk of cranial injury?" "I've had 12 concussions. Number 13 probably wins me a free coffee." Baron Venon didn't laugh. "I'll be standing by." Word spread fast. By the morning of the fight, the amphitheater was full. Students lined the upper balconies, betting credits and nervously comparing body densities. Mitch's corner had one other human, Lieutenant Gabrielle Moore, an Army combatives trainer who taught at the Academy's satellite campus. "You sure about this?" she asked, wrapping his hands. "I've been sure since the smug one called it theater." She paused. "Don't get reckless. He's not built like us." I noticed. Thorax entered the ring with a ceremonial robe and his body humming with low-grade energy fields designed to regulate muscle fatigue. He looked like a statue sculpted to intimidate gods. Mitch bounced on his feet, gloves touching. No theatrics, just breath, just rhythm. The bell rang. Thorax moved fast. His strikes were textbook, extensions of a form designed by generations of biomechanical analysts. His feet glided across the floor, arms slicing the air in arcs too perfect to be improvised. Mitch didn't flinch. He stepped back, pivoted. Thorax swung. The glove brushed Mitch's shoulder. Mitch jabbed. Thorax blocked. Another jab, then another. Tiny thuds, nothing major, just enough to irritate. Thorax roared and charged. Mitch stepped left, pivoted. His right foot dug in, and then it came. A hook so fast the cameras didn't catch it clean. 1 second, Thorax's chin was angled down. The next, it snapped sideways like someone had flipped a switch. His legs folded under him. He hit the floor like a felled tree. The amphitheater fell into absolute silence. Venom rushed the ring. Medical scanners beeped. No skull fracture, no spinal trauma. But the Calrith's brainwave readings showed classic signs of a level 2 concussion. He was unconscious but stable. It took 23 seconds for Thorax to wake. It took 3 hours for the story to spread to every department in the station. It took 1 week for the Academy's curriculum committee to add introductory human boxing to the mandatory war strategy syllabus. And it took precisely 6 days before another alien student asked Mitch to teach them how to do the pivot thing. He said yes. After all, he had time. The fight had dislocated his thumb and tore some muscle fiber in his back when he threw that punch. Recovery would take weeks. But Mitch didn't mind. He'd made his point. Mitch's right hand was wrapped in ice packs, elevated on a reinforced sling, while Ven hovered at his bedside like a judgmental hummingbird. "You stressed the extensor tendons," the android said. "We need to immobilize the wrist for at least 3 weeks. No impact, no resistance." "Noted," Mitch grunted, adjusting his hospital cot. Venom turned his sensor array toward Mitch's lower back. "You also incurred a partial strain to the left erector spinae group. Walking is fine, but any sudden torque or lifting will exacerbate it. Expect tenderness for 10 days minimum." Mitch sighed. "So no jumping rope. No rope, no punching, no demonstrations of any kind." Mitch stared at the ceiling. "I have 12 students signed up for tomorrow." Ben paused. "I suggest delegating." That was easier said than done. Word of the knockout had traveled faster than most sensor drones. Within 48 hours, boxing was the subject of 6 interdepartmental research memos, 2 cultural symposium debates, and a slightly exaggerated hollow movie script titled Fist of Earth, The Hook That Shook the Stars. Mitch didn't approve of the title, but he had bigger concerns. The influx of alien cadets requesting training had skyrocketed. They came in waves. Nervous Keshvari with armored neck plates asking if feints were legal. A wide-eyed Berluvian trio who wanted to learn how to predict a punch with your soul. Even a cautious Goran noble, flanked by 6 bodyguards, who requested private instruction in the human art of leverage. And then came the problem. Not everyone liked the new attention. Specifically, the Internal Tactical Coordination Department. Their lead instructor, Captain Salvin, had 2 things Mitch lacked: a doctorate in structured interspecies martial architecture and a towering inferiority complex. His modules were rigid, elegant, and untouched by improvisation. To him, combat was math, clean, predictable math. Salvin viewed Mitch's popularity as a viral anomaly, and he didn't like viruses. Human combat, he told the Strategy Council one morning, is based on anomalies, deviation from logic, emotional unpredictability. This makes it unreliable, and worse, unteachable. Then explain why 10 of your cadets dropped your course to join mine, Mitch replied, cradling his bandaged hand in a heat therapy wrap. Salvin's fins flushed blue-green. Curiosity. A phase. They'll return. They didn't. Within 2 weeks, Mitch had to expand his classes. Gabrielle joined as co-instructor, bringing a balance of tact and discipline Mitch admittedly lacked. The cadets called her the tall one who smiles before throwing you. They split lessons by species. The Breluvians trained footwork in zero gravity. The Serranians practiced punch mechanics underwater. The Gorans used resistance bands and pain thresholds Mitch frankly found terrifying. Meanwhile, Mitch followed his recovery plan. Ice, physical therapy, ultrasound treatments, limited range of momation drills for his thumb and spinal stretches twice daily. Ven checked in obsessively. Pain level, 6 in the mornings, 3 after heat wraps. Acceptable. You may shadow instruction, no physical demonstrations until tissue integrity returns. Got it? Still, he couldn't ignore the friction building. Salvin didn't just disapprove of boxing, he disapproved of Mitch's influence. Rumors emerged that Salvin had proposed a formal review to rescind boxing from the curriculum, arguing it was cultural novelty, not combat discipline. The Strategy Council hesitated. They proposed a solution, another exhibition, but this time not against a volunteer. It would be a test. 3 cadets, 1 from Salvin's program, 1 from the General Combat course, and 1 from Mitch's own class. 3 fights, 1 ring, same conditions. Mitch stared at the proposal for a long time. His hand still ached. He hadn't thrown a full punch in over 3 weeks. The tendons weren't ready for real impact, not without risking permanent damage. I won't fight, he said. But your student will, Gabrielle replied. And that's the point. It's not about you anymore. Mitch looked at the names on the registry. His top cadet was named Mason King, 22. Originally from Indianapolis. Heavyweight build, fast hands, slow temper. 4 years of Golden Gloves back home, before he joined the Interstellar Cultural Exchange Corps. His presence had been a paperwork error. He was meant to study agricultural logistics on a moon station. Then he saw Mitch knock out a Calrith. Now he trained 6 hours a day, ran drills twice a week, and only spoke when necessary. He didn't have Mitch's timing, but he had something else. Patience. And when Mason agreed to fight, Mitch nodded once. All right, we train. The prep began immediately. They kept it technical. Foot placement, defensive shoulder rolls, long jab feints. Mitch focused on movement while Gabrielle supervised sparring. 2 days in, Ben re-scanned Mitch's spine and hand. Tendon healing is 80% complete. Avoid torsion and sustained compression for 5 more days. You may perform light pad work at half GH. Mitch grinned. That's all I need. He put on the pads. For the first time in nearly a month, he moved with rhythm. Jab, roll, hook, pivot. He didn't punch back, but he didn't need to. Mason understood. The match was scheduled for the following week. 3 bouts, 2-minute rounds, minimal protective gear monitored by Ven and a trauma response team. Salvin's cadet was a lean, 4-armed Veltari with symmetrical strike patterns and a calm gaze. The general cadet was a no-nonsense Atari female with joint lock technique. And Mason? He walked into the ring with hands taped, gloves on, no music, no drama, just focus. In the first fight, Salvin's student overwhelmed the Atari in 37 seconds. The council murmured approval. Then Mason stepped forward. Round 1 was awkward. The Valtari's 4 arms made timing unpredictable. He struck in pairs, often one high and one low. Mason stayed patient. He took 2 clean shots, one to the ribs, one grazing his temple. Mitch's jaw tightened. Tuck that chin. Second round began. Mason adjusted. He didn't rush. He jabbed. He circled. He learned. The Valtari opened with a high feint, then snapped a low jab. Mason slipped it. Then came the pivot. Not wild, not angry. Just tight footwork, right shoulder loaded. The right hand exploded forward. The sound cracked across the ring like a snapped branch. The Valtari's legs buckled. And once again, the amphitheater went silent. VN was in the ring in seconds. No fracture. Mild concussion, stable vitals, recovery expected in 4 to 6 days, depending on neuroresonance variability. The strategy council stood in stunned quiet. Then the head of the curriculum board, an ancient six-eyed Droskin, adjusted his translator unit and said, "I now understand the term knockout." Mitch sat back, hands still in a wrap. He hadn't thrown the punch, but he'd passed it on. The day after Mason's win, Mitch woke to 14 new message pings and a dull ache radiating from the base of his spine. Not sharp, but enough to remind him he wasn't 20 anymore. Lay beneath the thick layers of muscle fatigue during recovery. "You reactivated dormant muscle fibers before full collagen integration," the android said after a morning scan. "Continue with aquatic therapy. No pad work until inflammation drops." Mitch grumbled through his teeth. "So back to swimming in circles." "At least it's symmetrical," Venn replied dryly. But the messages kept coming. 3 departments wanted seminars. The Political Anthropology Division invited him to co-lecture on pragmatic violence as nonverbal communication. The Strategic Analysis Bureau asked for a full breakdown of Mason's fight footage. And the Calreth, yes, the same empire whose champion Mitch had decked, sent a formal inquiry requesting temporary access to human pugilism instructors for military cross-training. That last one made Mitch sit up too fast. His back twinged. He winced. Gabrielle entered the room just in time to watch him grimace. "Remind me again," she said, dropping a bag of protein rations on his table. "Why did you pick a sport where the goal is to get punched in the face? Better than politics." She tossed him a bottle of pain relief gel. "Calreth Command sent a message. They want to fly you to Station Virat to meet their war chief." She blinked. "Just like that? No travel, not till I can jog without scaring myself." Bitch wasn't kidding. He'd tried jogging a day earlier. His right glute tightened halfway through and nearly dropped him. That night, while icing his back and sipping lukewarm rehydration mix, he watched Mason lead the Berluvian cadets through shadowboxing. The kid had found rhythm. Still clumsy in the hips, but sharper each day. And more surprising, Salvin hadn't left. The rigid alien instructor kept attending every class, silent, watching, occasionally scribbling notes on a slate covered in crystalline glyphs. Mitch finally walked over, slow and uneven. "You taking over my gig?" he asked. Salvin didn't look up. "I'm trying to understand what I missed." Mitch sat on the bench beside him carefully. "You didn't miss it. You ignored it." Salvin frowned. "We trained for reaction time, for precision, but not for failure." Mitch smiled. "Yeah, we do. We train to fail. That's what sparring is. We learn what not to do by doing it wrong until it's automatic." Salvin tapped the slate. "That's not strategy. That's behavioral brute force. It's both." For a long while, neither said anything. Then Salvin asked, "May I spar with you?" Mitch shook his head slowly. "I'm not ready. But I'll put you in with Gabrielle. She hits harder than me anyway." By week's end, Gabrielle had cracked 2 of Salvin's ribs, safely, with full gear, under medical supervision. He limped for 10 days, but thanked her afterward. That's when something shifted. The Academy stopped treating boxing as a curiosity and started treating it as a field of study. A new module opened. Human Combat Tactics, Applied Situational Response. Mitch designed the curriculum, Gabrielle taught the core drills, and Mason led peer instruction sessions twice a week. They used VR simulations to map punch trajectories against energy shield curves. They ran pressure chamber studies on punch force variance at different gravities. One team even built a predictive algorithm that analyzed body posture for telltale signs of incoming strikes. A year ago, no alien cadet could describe what a left hook was. Now they were arguing over pivot mechanics versus weight shift in close quarters stance transitions. Mitch had to admit it was a little surreal. Then the real test came. A distress call from a civilian freighter, Aeolian Drift, came through near a mining belt in the Periffin Fringe. Pirates. Biohacked mercs with fast ships and ugly reputations. The coalition dispatched a hybrid response unit. Mixed cadets, rapid deployment. Mason went with them. First active field assignment. Mitch tried not to show it, but he didn't sleep that night. The mission lasted 6 hours. When the unit returned, Mitch waited at the docking bay. Mason came off the ramp with a cut lip, bruised knuckles, and a look that said, "It worked." What happened? Boarding party. Shields failed, had to go physical. One of them rushed me with a blade. Mitch clenched his fists instinctively. Mason nodded. I stepped back, jabbed, then pivoted. Hook. Just like we drilled. Mitch didn't smile. He walked Mason straight to the infirmary. DNN examined his hand. Second-degree contusion, no bone fracture. Full recovery in 5 to 7 days. You wore gloves? Armored tacticals, Mason replied. Mitch let out a long breath. Relief, mostly. It was one thing to spar in a controlled ring. It was another to punch someone trying to kill you. But the system held. The training held. And most importantly, the cadet returned. That night, the Strategy Council convened again. Mitch was invited to observe. The Droskin delegate spoke first. The field application of human combat strategy exceeded projections. We propose establishing a permanent human tactics division under Academy oversight. Salvin raised a hand. I support the motion. The vote passed. Unanimously. Mitch leaned back in his seat, not because he was smug, but because his back still twinged when he sat too long. Outside the council chamber, a new plaque was being installed. It read, Human Combat Integration Center, under one punch. 3 months later, Mitch finally jogged a full mile without limping. He did it on the outer deck track, the one with magnetic footing and a view of the stars stretching into blue-violet nothing. It wasn't fast. It wasn't pretty. But it was complete. And when he finished, he sat on the bench just outside the old training bay, sweat clinging to his shirt, back loose but not screaming, right hand flexing with zero pain. Venin had cleared him for full activity the week before. Muscle regeneration within parameters. Ligaments stable, proceed with caution. Mitch had nodded. He would. He wasn't in a rush to throw another punch anyway, not unless it mattered. The Academy had changed more than he expected. The new Human Tactics Division was thriving, and not just because of the novelty. Alien cadets had begun adapting boxing concepts into their native disciplines. The Breluvians added head movement to their close-quarter spiraling techniques. The Voltari began incorporating staggered timing to disrupt predictable patterns. Even the Calrith had submitted a formal request to translate Mitch's training footage into neural implant tutorials, though they were still arguing over licensing rights. And Mason? Mason was already a junior instructor. He ran a class of mixed cadets, held open Q&A sessions once a week, and had started tweaking the training drills to include situational stress cues. One of his lessons had gone viral across the station. Him sparring blindfolded, using only foot placement and shoulder cues to predict punches. It wasn't perfect, but it was effective, and it made the other instructors take him seriously. Mitch mostly stayed in the background now. He attended staff meetings, reviewed footage, updated lesson plans. The Academy gave him a new office. Gabrielle filled the wall with a photo board labeled First to Fall, pictures of every cadet who'd taken their first knockout in sparring. Some were proud, others grumpy, but all had come back for more. That was the difference. Boxing taught something alien disciplines rarely addressed, getting hit and coming back. The aliens admired resilience in theory. Mitch showed them what it looked like in practice. And that became his legacy. The final recognition came without warning. At a quarterly gathering, the Academy's High Chancellor, a being made of translucent mineral layers and a low-pitched hum that translated poorly into speech, took the stage. "Combat is not just calculation," the translator droned. "It is pattern, rhythm, resolve. We honor Instructor Mitchell Callahan, whose contribution to interspecies martial understanding has reshaped our core doctrine." The Chancellor gestured. A new insignia appeared beside the Academy's crest, a small, silver glove embedded in a circular path of stars. Symbolic, but unmistakable. Gabrielle elbowed Mitch as applause echoed from across 3 tiers of balconies. "You gonna cry, old man? I'm sweating through my eye sockets." She laughed. "You've earned it." That night, Mitch walked the halls slowly, each footfall echoing through the quiet, past the sparring rooms where late-night cadets still practiced pivots under dim lights, past the simulation bays where a new batch of recruits reviewed Mason's field footage, rewinding his knockout frame by frame. He paused outside the old ring, the same one where he'd dropped Jorax all that time ago. It looked smaller now, or maybe he'd just grown past it. He stepped inside, stood center, and took his stance, not to fight, but to feel it again. His right hand hovered, no pain. He exhaled once, crisp. Jab, step, pivot. No punch, just movement. From the corner, a voice, "You still got it." Mitch turned. Jorax stood at the edge, no longer in ceremonial garb, just simple black tunic and training trousers. He looked relaxed. Older, maybe. Smarter. "Surprised to see you here," Mitch said. "I came to spar," Jorax replied. "No enhancements, just me." Mitch chuckled. "You sure?" "I have learned," Jorax said, stepping forward, "that losing to a human does not dishonor one's clan, but refusing to learn afterward does." Mitch nodded once. Then he walked over, offered gloves. They tapped. No crowd, no cameras, just 2 fighters, 1 lesson. They moved slow at first, careful, deliberate. And somewhere in the middle of the 3rd round, Jorax landed a jab. It wasn't heavy, but it was clean. Mitch grinned. "About time." Jorax snorted. "I've been watching your hips." They kept going. And outside the ring, beyond the walls, across stations and ships and systems, alien cadets still argued about pivot angles and shoulder rolls. They debated hook trajectories and weight transfer and something they now called the Earth Principle, the idea that fighting isn't always about winning. Sometimes it's about standing up again,